Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we are back in War Thunder looking at another devblog. This is for the M4A1 FL10. It is the last of the 3 devblogs that we're going to get for the French premium tanks, which are going to be in bundles. I haven't done the B1 Tur because, well, I already did that other video on it talking about its history and my thoughts in the game for it and stuff, so it kind of seemed redundant, but there is a devblog there for the B1 Tur if you want to have a look. But anyway, let's get into the M4A1 FL10. Basically, what you get out of this machine is an M4A1 chassis with an FL10 turret on it. That's pretty much it. And if you don't know what the FL10 turret is, it's pretty much the oscillating turret that you find on the AMX-13, which is another bundle vehicle that we're getting for the French. What is most interesting about this turret is the fact that it is oscillating, basically meaning that it pitches on the horizontal and vertical axis from a different point compared to the majority of machines. This was seen as a technical advance for the French at the time of post-World War II, where most people were staying away from the oscillating turret idea, basically because you couldn't run stabilizers with it, or at least it was very hard to do. And generally it was uncomfortable for the crew, mainly because the turrets themselves were quite small, and also because, well, let's just say they jigged about a little bit too much. So what is different between what we would see as a normal 76mm Sherman on the M4A1 chassis compared to the M4A1 FL10? Well, pretty much the gun is different, the ammunition is different, and the size and shape of the turret. Now, something that I'm not really going to go into is the history, but I will comment on it. What you'll actually find on the devblog itself, generally you have a little history section. Well, this just isn't there for this devblog, and the reason for this is because even though there was some M4A1s made for the French with the FL10 turrets, it seems like from my reading they were used as much more of a test bed than the actual ones which were used by Egypt themselves. According to Gaijin, and from what I've read as well, the Sherman tanks with the FL10 turret on top of them were supposed to be used for export, mainly to other countries, never actually to be used by the French army. This was pretty much a way to use a bunch of older vehicles that they had at the time, and you can pretty much see this in stuff like the SO4000 as well, with the Narval, where they basically just put together a bunch of stuff they had left over and tried to create a machine out of it. Well, this was pretty much the tank version. They created a new turret, a new gun, but the chassis itself and everything inside of it was pretty much the same as a normal M4A1. If we actually want to talk about the historical use of this turret on a Sherman chassis, what we have to bring up is the M4A4. Now, the M4A4, which was used by the Egyptians with the FL10 turret, actually had an M4A2 engine in it. And once again, this shows the conglomeration of parts together, which left France, which were basically left to France after World War II. They put together some machines for people to use, decided they didn't want to use them for themselves, so they exported it. But the M4A1, which we see in game as a premium, is not one which was used by Egypt. That's why if you actually read the devblog itself, the wording is pretty well worded by the fact that they say instead the M4A1 FL10 was purely intended as an export vehicle for Egypt. That doesn't mean it actually was, it means that it was intended to be. And because of this, the reason why this is because the Egyptians never used it. They used the M4A4 variant with the M4A2 engine. So this leads me to believe that the M4A1 FL10 will have a normal tree variant in the form of the M4A4. Now, if you don't know what the M4A4 is, it's pretty much an up-armored M4A3. That's pretty much it. I mean, the standard M4A4 had a 75mm on it, and the only real difference between it and something like an M4A3 is that it had more armor on its hull. Now, what is kind of interesting about the M4A4 Sherman is that there was many interesting vehicles used from different nations. So, first of all, you have the M4A4 FL10 for the French, which was used by the Egyptians, very interesting vehicle. Then you have, for the British, the M4A4 Tulip. Now, the M4A4 Tulip was a rocket Sherman, we'll call it. Very accurate rockets, pretty much used to destroy buildings, structures, bunkers, anything like that. It's pretty much just a general destroyer in the front part. But what was kind of interesting about it is that it stayed in its 75mm form. Now, we haven't got an actual M4A4 in game, so this would be a great opportunity to add it in the French tree in the form of a standard tech tree version of this vehicle that we see as a prototype. The reason I also think this is going to happen is if we look at some very close vehicles compared to, like the bundle vehicles compared to what you actually get in the tech tree, a great comparison is with the British. So when the British first came out with their bundle, you have the Avenger, which was the 76mm M10 pretty much. And then when you went to... Oh, sorry, not the Avenger, the Achilles. And then when the standard tech tree came out, they pretty much had a copy of it in it as well, with slight changes, but not really. So that leads me to believe that we're going to get some kind of version of this in the tree. Whereas with the B1 Ter, you have the Chow 1 Bis. With this, you have the M4A4 FL10. And then with the AMX, you have just the normal AMX 13. Whereas we have an AMX 13 with 80 gems on it. So just like the STRV81 compared to the Centurion Mark III. Like, it's pretty much matching up in my head when it comes to this stuff. So hopefully we do get an M4A4 standard version of this tank in the tech tree with an M4A2 engine. That would make more sense to me than this machine. But this is kind of why I'm not really that interested in this bundle. The bundle itself is pretty good value if you don't want to go whole hog and get the AMX 13, but it's just odd to see that this vehicle is being used as a bundle vehicle, and it wasn't really one that is really well known or really used that much. But you know, that's just a personal opinion. I mean, a lot of people could say that about the Black Prince, and for me, you know, yes, the Black Prince wasn't used that much. Yes, it was a pretty much failed prototype, but, you know, I've done a lot of reading on it, and I think it's interesting. But for other people, they won't, so, you know, it's definitely a personal opinion thing. But anyway, let's actually talk about this machine. What kind of worries me about this new machine is not the gun itself, it's the actual turret. So the gun, from what I can find, I found many conflicting sources on what it can fire, but it seems like the main stuff it can fire is AP, APDS, and heat. Those are the safe bets. Everything else is either some test bed, ammunition, or it's some kind of wacky thing which may have happened, but I can't find any clarification on it. So the majority of people are going to be using APDS on this. Depending on how good the heat is, but right now the meta of the game is APDS and then sometimes heat FS, not really HESH anymore, sometimes solid shots if you're looking at stuff like the M103. So the majority of the time I believe people are going to use APDS on this. So this gun is very similar to what we find on something like a Vickers. The Vickers has a gun which has a really short reload, very similar to the Centurion Mark X, Centurion Mark III, and Carnarvon. Now, we don't know what the actual reload rate of the gun is going to be. That is not something that is privy to me. It is not something that is privy to you. We know what it is historically, but we don't know what it's going to be in game, because there's going to be two stages of this autoloader. There's going to be the loading between the actual shells themselves, and then there's going to be the loading of the drum magazine as well. So my guess is we're going to get a reload rate of maybe 4 or 5 seconds between each shot of the autoloader, which isn't going to be affected by crew skills, remember, since it is an autoloader. But then, after the 12 shots are fired, since it's 2 6 drum mags, so therefore 12 overall, there's going to be something like a 2-minute or 3-minute reload rate on each of the drum magazines. So this means you can wait 2 or 3 minutes and be able to get 6 rounds back, or you can wait like 6 minutes and you can get both back. Now the thing is, this is... I don't know how to put this, but this is speculation. And it's basically the same system that World of Tanks has, but elongated. Now remember, I'm talking about a realistic setting. And basically the reason why I think it has to be elongated is because you have so much firepower within those first 12 rounds. You know, in a minute, being able to just slug through the enemy that can see you. Let's just say an enemy tank misses a shot and, you know, he can't get into cover straight away. You're easily going to get 2 or 3 shots at him without any issues. It's going to be kind of crazy. Also, the muzzle velocity on this gun is incredibly high. So, being able to snipe with it, accuracy should be good on it. All of those factors are going to make this gun good. But anyway, back to what I was talking about before. What is interesting about this vehicle is you pretty much had to, or the gun itself and the auto-loading mechanism, you pretty much had to just stop the vehicle, open it up, unload or load in the drum magazines in a very stationary state, being completely combat ineffective. And I wonder if this will be translated to the game. So what I mean by this is once you've expended your 12 shots, and then you move back into cover, or maybe you move a little bit away from the battlefield, away from harm's way, will you have to stay stationary to reload the gun? Because the thing is, with repairs, you do have to stay stationary, even if it's like a horizontal turret drive, which, you still could be able to move. The idea is the whole crew is trying to repair this one component of the tank, so therefore you have to stop and wait. So with the reloading mechanism, is this going to be the case as well? Are we going to have to stop the whole tank to reload? Now, generally, we haven't done this before, so it would be very surprising if this happens. But then again, this is a completely new mechanism. We do have an autoloader in the game already, a 2-stage one. We also have autoloaders which are on stuff like the MBT, the KPZ. The BMP does have an autoloader. I'm not sure if it's represented in game. The Object 120 has one as well, I believe. Basically, I think it might be the Object 90. It's basically the amphibious boat that you get after the PT-76. It's either the 120 or the 60 or the 90, something like that. But anyway, that has an autoloader and a stabilizer. So none of them have to stop, but none of them have to have the same mechanism as the FL10 gun. So we're going to have to see how they decide to do it. And it all depends on how powerful those 12 shots are in a row. It's definitely going to be interesting. Also, there's a thing to think about. Is there going to be a relapse between the 6 rounds themselves? As I said before, there was 2 drum magazines. So you fire off 1 drum magazine in the form of 6 rounds, and then you have another drum magazine which is the form of 6 other rounds. So is there going to be 6 rapid fire hits, and then a break of a little bit, then 6 more, and then a longer reload? Or is, while these 6 second drum magazines are firing, are we going to be able to repair the first? Sorry, not repair the first, but reload the first. You see how there is so many questions that have to be answered with this gun. And hopefully when the the dev server rolls around, we will be able to. Something that is also interesting, that I haven't... Well, I tried to comment on, but I got stuck into the gun. The turret. So this is a completely new turret. The hull itself is not new. The hull will very much perform like an M4A1's at its BR, which I believe this thing will probably be around 5.3. Once again, really depends on how the gun handles. But let's say 5.3 for now. Very similar to the other 76 Shermans with the like the HVSS, which has a little bit more armor, but technically has a little bit more firepower because it has a longer reload than the FL10. But the turret itself, now this turret is smaller, it is more compact, the guys inside it are obviously incredibly cramped, but one of the things that not worries me, but makes me think it's going to act very different from a Sherman turret is its shape. So if you look at any of the pictures, you'll find that it has this quite aggressive slope on the front of it. Now this is not including the little flat parts, below it, but the aggressive slope has always been interesting in War Thunder and how it interacts with guns. So, and also there's many moving parts to it. And the other tank that I will point to, which is a great example of this, is the Comet. So the Comet has many weird angles on the front of the turret, and it is one of the reasons why sometimes when you shoot the turret with your 88mm, whether it be a Tiger II-1 or a Tiger H1, what happens is the shell will bounce. And that's because it hits one of these little angles, and because of how the game works with ricochets and stuff like that, it will just hit it and it will lose so much penetration it won't go through. Now, the FL10 turret has these as well. It has these little nooks, it has these little crannies, and if it is really well modeled, then you may just see shots disappearing into it. And as I said before, also the fact that it's very well sloped on the front. Now if you shoot it in the back of the turret, I expect a very large explosion and a lot of fun. But from the front, I think a lot of people are going to be writing quite a few angry messages about it overperforming or doing too well until they figure out where to actually shoot it. And this is going to be an issue with the AMX and also the Sherman FL10. But it's just something to think about. It is a two-man turret, so once you take it out, there should be two crew left, a machine gunner and a driver, meaning that you will have to shoot it more than once to kill it, unless you're able to hit the hull. But just remember that this turret, until you get fully engrossed with it, you may struggle with it, just because of its angles, just because it has so much, little nooks and crannies to it. Just go out and shoot a Comet in the front, and see if you can get your shells to bounce, which have a penetration which is twice the amount of the turret. It is very easy to do, and it's when you hit those little nooks, and this turret, to me, when I look at it, it has that. Also, there's some smoke grenades on it, which is, kind of interesting in itself, but overall, I would say this is my least favourite out of the three. The B1 Ter is going to be fun to just run around with its armor, see if it's actually effective. The AMX may be meta changing, but also is just going to be really fun to run about with, a very fast light tank. Even if it's not that powerful, it's still going to be great, just like when you take an M22 Locust into a rank 5 battle. This is much more of the mediocre choice in my opinion, not as interesting as the other two. Because everything you get out of the AMX, you get on this. Apart from on this, well, you don't have the ATGMs and you have an M4A1 shell. But overall, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.